The rain was coming down hard, drumming a lonely rhythm on my window. Just another Tuesday night in the city. And then, this file lands on my desk. It wasn't your usual case, not by a long shot. No smoky backrooms, no jilted lovers. Nope, this one was all chrome and fiber optics. The title read, "The Case of the Perfect Classroom," a school run completely by artificial intelligence. I poured myself a coffee, black, and cracked open the file. Looks like it was time to go back to school. So the brochure in the file, it painted a real pretty picture. A utopia of learning, you could say. This AI system, it promised a world where every single student gets a personalized education, a curriculum tailored to their every strength, their every weakness. Like UNESCO said, it had the potential to solve the biggest challenges we face in education. No kid left behind, every mind perfectly nurtured. It was sold as the future, flawless, efficient, the perfect system. But here's the thing I've learned about perfect systems. They have a funny way of hiding some very imperfect truths. If everything was so great, my phone wouldn't have rung. See, deep inside this digital paradise, something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. A student, just one student, had been flagged, failed, and just pushed aside. Their whole future altered in a flash. The system made a judgment, and a kid became a casualty. My job? To find out why. The case file laid it all out. The central mystery was simple, but, it was also pretty chilling. A student with a totally spotless record was suddenly red flagged for potential failure. And there was no explanation from the human teachers because, well, they weren't in the loop. The decision came straight from the AI. It was clean, it was clinical, and it was completely baffling. It was like a ghost in the machine had just pointed a finger and nobody knew why. I took a look at the financials, and let me tell you, this wasn't some small-time operation. The AI and education market was projected to be a $6 billion industry by 2024. Now, when that kind of money's on the table, mistakes aren't just mistakes anymore. They're liabilities. Every company, every government, they were all scrabbling for a piece of the action. And in a gold rush like that, I had a hunch some corners were probably being cut. The stakes were way higher than anyone was letting on. It all came down to a pretty simple fact. An AI is only as good as the information you feed it. So to understand its decision, I had to understand its diet. My investigation had to start with the data. Every click, every keystroke, every little pause, every right and wrong answer from every student, it was all being recorded 24/7. The AI was watching them in ways a human teacher never, ever could. I needed to see what it was seeing. So my first move was to follow that data trail. It's this invisible world, right? A web of ones and zeros that tells a story. Every student was leaving behind a digital footprint, a kind of shadow self that lived on the school's servers. And I knew that somewhere in that maze of information, there had to be a clue, a breadcrumb that would lead me to why our victim was targeted. The hunt was on. This constant silent monitoring, turns out it has a name. They call it data valence. It's exactly what it sounds like, surveillance, but through data. The school wasn't just teaching students, it was harvesting them. Every academic success, every emotional frustration, every little flicker of confusion, it was all getting logged, analyzed, and stored away. And that led me to a whole series of questions that, funny enough, nobody at the school seemed to be asking. Like, who owns this mountain of personal data? The school? The tech company? The student themselves? And really, can a 10-year-old actually give informed consent to this kind of round-the-clock monitoring? Now, consider this. Less than 30% of countries outside of Europe have any real solid data protection laws. So who's making sure this data isn't being sold off to the highest bidder? Yeah, there were no easy answers, just a whole lot of suspicion. All right, so after digging through all those data streams and finding nothing but a pile of unanswered questions, my focus shifted. The data, that was the crime scene. But the algorithm was the star witness. It was the one that processed all the evidence and made the final call. It was time to put that algorithm on the stand. The central question in any investigation is always about the reliability of your witnesses. The school board, the parents, the tech company, they all swore up and down that the algorithm was impartial, a completely neutral observer of facts. But, I've been in this business long enough to know that nobody, and I mean nobody, and nothing, is ever truly neutral. I needed to know if this witness could really be trusted. And here's the rub. The promise is a clean, unbiased decision maker. But the reality? It's a whole different story. The source material is crystal clear on this. If you train an algorithm on data that was created by biased humans, it doesn't just learn that bias, it amplifies it. All our hidden prejudices about gender or race or even the neighborhood a kid lives in can get baked right into the code. The machine just becomes a mirror for our own worst instincts, and it makes those biases feel like objective fact. The big problem was interrogating this particular witness was next to impossible. The school's AI was built on what's called an artificial neural network. The easiest way to think of it is like a brain, just with layers upon layers of digital connections. It takes in data, processes it through all these hidden layers, and then it spits out a decision. But what happens in those middle layers? That's the mystery. It's what they call a black box. And this is the part that really sends a chill down your spine. The decision-making process is, for all intents and purposes, unknowable. Even the engineers who built the thing can't always tell you exactly why it made a specific choice. Our star witness was mute. It made a decision that changed a child's life forever, and it couldn't even explain its reasoning. It was a locked-room mystery, and the key had been thrown away. I had seen enough. The data trail was murky, and the star witness couldn't talk. I had followed the clues from that gleaming classroom right into the dark, silent core of the machine. It was time. Time to deliver my closing argument. Time for the verdict. So who was the culprit? Well, there was no villain twirling a mustache here. The teachers, they meant well. The programmers, they were just doing their jobs. No, the real perpetrator was something much bigger. It was the system itself. It was the blind faith we put in technology, the mad rush to innovate without ever stopping to think about the consequences. The crime was the uncritical deployment of this powerful tool without any of the ethical guardrails to keep it on track. So how do we stop this from happening again? How do we get justice? Well, the file actually contained a blueprint, a set of recommendations from UNESCO. And it's not about banning the technology, it's about managing it. First, you need a clear vision. Then you build policies that put ethics and fairness first. You have to demand data privacy right from the start, not treat it like an afterthought. You train your teachers to work with the AI, not just get replaced by it. And finally, you never stop monitoring. You never stop evaluating the impact. You have to keep asking the tough questions. I typed up my report and closed the file. For me, this one case was over. But I knew the real investigation, the one that we all have to be a part of, that was just getting started. These AI systems are being rolled out in schools all over the world. This case won't be the last. So, my part in the story is done. But now, it's your turn. And that leaves us all with one final, crucial question. This technology is an incredibly powerful tool. In the right hands, with the right rules, it could truly revolutionize learning for the better. But without those rules, it could just become a faster, more efficient way of leaving the vulnerable behind. It all comes down to the choice we all have to make. Are we going to build an AI that serves the common good, or one that simply automates our oldest inequalities? The answer to that, well, that's a case we all have to solve together.